2024 has been an incredible year for the creative industry, so in today's episode of Design Ahead, we'll be taking a look back at some of the most important products and trends from the past 12 months. Welcome back to Design Ahead with me, Jake Fernandes, and today we're going to be doing a bit of an end-of-year roundup for the creative industry. It's been a crazy year, 2024. I think this is the first year that post-COVID, we've started to settle into our ways of working. We've really got used to this new working from home, hybrid working nature, and companies are fully focused on the future now. COVID's been and gone. 2023 was that year of readjustment, and then 2024 was the year to act. So I wanted to have a bit of end-of-year fun with you guys. I wanted to look back at some of the most important topics, important products of the past year, and I was writing the script out and I was thinking, let's have a bit more fun and let's make this into a ranking. So I've got 6 different categories and I've got a top 3 for each of those categories. These are quite diverse categories. We've got top products, we've got major breakthroughs, we've got most innovative creative solutions. So there's a bit of a range of things. There's topics, there's products, there's a bit of everything. I think this is the perfect way to round out the year. So I'm going to have two-parters. We're going to have a 2-parter looking back at 2024 and we're going to have a 2-parter looking forward into 2025. I do quite like the idea of these being 20-minute podcasts, so we're going to keep it to 20 minutes if we can. We'll see how far we get in this one, but I've got 3 topics for today and then 3 topics for next week's episode. As we're going along, if you disagree with anything, feel I've maybe missed something out, then feel free to drop a comment and let's have a discussion about it, because there are so many things that have happened over the past year. It was quite hard to narrow these down to a top 3, but I've done my best. The first category is major design breakthrough of 2024. So these are all about practices that have evolved over the past year. What's the industry gravitating towards? Or are there any products or services that have been developed to lead the way within the creative industry? Coming in at third place is 3D and real-time design tools. 3D is something that I've not really been able to get into much. I think it's probably because of my preconceived notions that 3D software was very difficult to get a hold of and run. I think my understanding was the barrier to entry was quite high, but when I was researching this topic, I realized how much has changed over the past few years and how accessible 3D design tools are now. It's always been something that I've been quite interested in, but like I say, I thought the barrier to entry was quite high. So going into some of these tools was really insightful for me. Starting off, we have Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine 5 came out, I think, in 2022, and there's been widespread adoption within the gaming industry, for example, with this, and there's a lot of interesting products that are coming out. There's a lot of testing going on as well, so being able to see how far Unreal Engine 5 can take things, even water particle features. I've seen a few crazy things. I've seen people model Cyberpunk in Unreal Engine 5 and it looks incredibly realistic when you see some of the clips. And we now have things like Unreal Engine for Web, which has really improved collaboration for professionals working within the 3D space. Again, I don't know too much about it, but from what I have seen, it's been really impactful. I think the more that collaboration gets brought to the forefront of these tools, the more impactful that is for professionals working within that space, and ultimately the better products that are going to be made at the other end. Similarly, Blender and Adobe Substance have had enhancements. Again, I have downloaded Blender about 15 years ago, where it pretty much crashed my laptop within 5 minutes of downloading it because the intensity to run the program was so high. But as I said, it's become a lot more accessible, and these enhancements made to Blender and Adobe's version of that, which is Substance, have been really, really impactful for the industry. We have the existing industries like the gaming industry that use 3D programs quite a lot, improving their workflows, but we have new industries adopting this, and I've got one that we'll come on to in a moment. But the retail space is being able to create products that users can then preview items within their home. They can weigh up to see if something's worth buying before they actually get to the shop to investigate that. And we've also got in-browser 3D editing tools like Spline. This is incredible. I didn't know this existed, but there are 3D editing tools now that are available that you can just access through Google Chrome. They do have quite powerful capabilities as well. I don't think they'll be as advanced as Blender and Adobe Substance, especially when you download those products, but it's incredible to see that you can have 3D modeling software within the browser now and create some pretty cool stuff. Grabbing the silver medal for this category is immersive design. This is all about your AR, your VR, mixed reality, and the progress it's made over the past year might not have seemed that substantial, but you've got to remember we had the release of the Apple Vision Pro. Of course, it had its critics, and rightfully so. You know, it's quite bulky. You've got to carry around a power pack if you want to use it for more than 5 minutes, but it was a huge marker in terms of technological advancement within that space. The mixing of augmented and virtual reality and the real world is something that nothing has really been able to achieve before. You know, we've got the Meta Quest, which has been fantastic for VR and switching to maybe AR as well, but nothing that you can merge the two together. The potential that the Vision Pro has shown is really, really impactful, and I think it sets a standard that is only going to become more achievable and more accessible over the coming years. Going back to what I mentioned before as well, we have IKEA Creative, which allows you to see IKEA furniture in your home through your mobile device before you go to the shop to buy it. I think this is a total game changer really for the customer experience within retail, because how many times have you went to IKEA knowing that you need a bit of furniture or maybe a desk or a bookshelf, and you've got there and thought, right, I need it to be this height and this width, and here's the exact measurements, and then you're looking at it, you might even take it out of the box to weigh it up, and is the colour quite right? It looked a bit different online, I'm not too sure if it goes with what I have, and then you buy it, and then you take it home, you assemble it, and you're like, oh god, this stands out like a sore thumb. IKEA Creative gets rid of most of that problem because you're able to preview these items within your home, and then you know if it's going to fit, you know if it's going to stylistically match, and then you can go to IKEA, purchase it or buy it online with little to no worry that it's not going to meet your expectations. We've also got some really cool websites coming within this space. I'd say more towards the 3D side again. We do have some really interesting browser capabilities that allow for 3D games to be played within the browser. Supporter Robinson, for anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's a huge music producer and songwriter from the US. He created a 3D website that allowed users to kind of run through playing little mini games that showcased his music, promoted his tour, showed the art form that he was trying to portray as well. I thought it was really, really cool the way that he did that. I think I've never really seen someone in the music industry do that for an album release. It's set a standard really that I hope gets built upon over the coming years, and more people start to look at interesting ways to market their material. And yeah, I just thought it was really, really cool, and I would 100% recommend you guys check it out and give it a play. So number one, what was the major creative breakthrough of 2024? Well, it's only going to be one winner. It's got to be the AI evolution. Yes, it's not new. None of these were. They're not brand new things coming out of the box, but the breakthroughs that they make are absolutely incredible, and AI 100% takes the cake on that. We've seen the release of ChatGPT 4.0, we've seen Midjourney version 6, we've seen so many products being released within this space. A lot of companies are opting to make their own large language models now, which is quite interesting. Competition is always a good thing. It keeps other companies on the front foot and on their toes. And the adoption of ChatGPT and creating your own GPTs has been widespread throughout the industry. We've seen AI Figma tools, we've seen AI integration within the actual Figma product, so not just relying on plugins. We've seen travel sites like Expedia providing AI to help customers plan their holidays and sort out different things along the way. I think the market has really matured this year. I think the capabilities were provided last year and a little bit of 2022, but people were just starting to understand how to use them. 2024 has been the year to execute them and really build upon those ideas to make them vital for companies to progress. We've also got GPT Enterprise. My company was able to get involved in this, and it's really helped with the internal training, guiding users through our platforms, and helping with the onboarding process, as well as existing employees, helping them to kind of get up to speed with something or help with whatever it might be. I think as well as trust has started to develop, more companies have been willing to work with GitHub Copilot, especially when they're working on intellectual property. You know, these are products that they're developing that are owned by the company, and sometimes you can be a little bit apprehensive sharing that with an outside tool, or you're not too sure where that information is going to go, and ultimately you need to evaluate the morals and the ethics and the responsibility of the companies that you're working with. So it's been fantastic to see more major companies trust tools like GitHub Copilot with their intellectual property to help it develop. Category number 2 is top creative styles and trends of 2024. And in third place, we have sustainable design. Sustainable design, aka digital sustainability, is something that I've done a podcast on in the past. I will link it somewhere up here, I guess. It's a topic that is a little bit close to my heart. I think over the past couple of years, I've been investigating it more. I've really started to put some of those learnings into practice in my own work as well, and advocate for the importance of sustainable design. In a nutshell, if you're not too familiar, it essentially means that we are creating products in a sustainable manner. We're considering the environmental impact they have and trying to reduce that as much as possible. And it's been fantastic to see a lot of companies get involved in carbon offsetting, be involved in optimizing their products to reduce carbon consumption, and overall taking more of a sustainable outlook when they're designing or redesigning some of their products. It's also really cool to see professionals creating things like planet-centric personas and journeys to really highlight the importance that the environment has on a product lifecycle. We've also got sustainable features, so being able to prompt the user to select something that might be a more sustainable outcome. If you're shopping for clothes, then providing the user with an option to select sustainable clothing, and that way pushing them towards the sustainable route, and in the end, everybody wins. You're producing more sustainable clothing, they're buying it, and the world is just benefiting overall. Second place, dark mode, now becoming a standard really. And now dark mode has been around for ages, I know that, but it's been really encouraging to see a lot more applications and websites using a dark mode feature and allowing the users to select if they want light versus dark. It's also quite cool to see some of these apps tapping into the device settings. So if your device is set to dark mode, it will just automatically use dark mode within the app. Of course, you can overrule it if you want, but it's really nice just being able to download something and it's already set into dark mode for me. It's something that I personally use quite a lot. And there are many reasons it's so important. You know, from a health perspective, it reduces eye strain, it reduces blue light emission, it helps with accessibility needs. A lot of visually impaired users or those who rely on accessibility requirements to navigate and understand content a lot easier. It's also great from an energy consumption perspective. Dark mode actually reduces the energy consumption of batteries quite substantially when you compare it to light modes or very bright colors. And I'm really happy to see that it's almost become a standard for a lot of products. I was redesigning my portfolio earlier this year and I opted to choose a theme that had a dark mode version. So I would provide that option to users to either see it in the light mode where I have gone a little bit more bright with the colors, or a dark mode version, which personally I even prefer. And number 1 is inclusive design. Now, inclusive design essentially covers accessibility requirements, but also considers things like cultural differences and neurodivergency. There are a lot of things that go into inclusive design, and it's really encouraging to see that this has been a topic taken very seriously by the world. WCAG 2.2, which is the Web Accessibility Guidelines, was published at the back end of last year, and just for reference, WCAG 2.1 was actually released way back in 2018, so it's been about 5-6 years since we had a new edition, and the release of it at the back end of last year has meant that this year companies have been focusing very heavily on understanding the new guidelines, making sure that their products and services meet them, and if they are building anything brand new, that they are meeting those 2.2 standards. Accessibility is not just important to make sure that people with accessibility needs can use your product, but it's actually a legal requirement in pretty much every country. I know in the UK we have the Equality Act, which means that products are legally obligated to meet certain accessibility standards, and the same goes across US, Canada, Europe, Australia, pretty much everywhere. And when you're designing government products like I have been for the past few years, you're under even more scrutiny because they need to be going through accessibility audits and essentially double checking everything is matching those guidelines. And another great benefit is not only does it help those with accessibility needs, but it actually provides some context for the general public as well. If you've got an icon on a page that isn't immediately understandable, being obligated to have a description next to it is going to help all of your users, not just those with accessibility needs. And another interesting part of this is neurodivergent friendly experiences. I've just tried to say that 5 or 6 times, and this is the first one that I've got right, so this cut is staying in. But we're going to talk about that more in the preview to 2025. And the final topic for this video is going to be the biggest lessons learned in the creative industry in 2024. And kicking it off at number 3, collaboration is key. Now, I know what you're saying. Yes, of course we know collaboration is key, but why is it so important in 2024? Well, if I take you back to the start of this video, I mentioned that this is the year where we've started to understand how we are going to progress going forward in terms of a society and the ways in which we work. COVID redefined the ways in which we work. We went from working in offices 9 to 5, 5 days a week, to permanently remote, and sometimes even with varying schedules. You know, you weren't necessarily regimented to 9 to 5. You might want to start at 7 a.m, finish at 3 if you've got school pickup. You might want to start a bit later, finish a bit later. And I think that way of working really embedded within some company cultures. 2023 was the year in which we'd moved out of lockdowns. The world was pretty much back to normal, in quotation marks, and companies had the big decision to make because we had huge offices that they were paying so much money for on rent if they didn't already own them. And they had to basically decide, you know, are we going to make everybody come back into the workplace and work how we did in 2019? Or are we going to adapt to this new way of working? And I think overall within the industry, if you weren't keeping to fully remote, then you were moving to a hybrid working. So a couple of days in the office and a couple of days out. And that comes back to the collaboration as key, is because we no longer were in the workspace at the same time. We were all digitally online. We were collaborating with our teammates through Teams calls, through applications like Miro, and this is setting the standard for the future way of working. I don't think we're going to go back to everybody having to be in an office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's going to be online, it's going to be remote, there's going to be opportunities to work with people across the globe, really. And that's why 2024 has been so important for the industry. So many tools were too slow to get on board with the collaboration. I used to use Sketch before COVID, and we would often find ourselves having to pass along files to each other. We'd be working on 2 areas of the same file at the same time and then have to combine the files to evaluate the changes. It was crazy because there was no collaboration. And then Adobe XD and of course now Figma came along with incredible options for collaboration, and let's be honest, Sketch has been completely left in the dark. Yes, it does have collaboration features now, but it was too long to adapt, and these industry standard tools have all had collaboration in real time at the forefront. So in a nutshell, industry standard tools needed to get that collaboration part right in 2024, and those that did will pioneer the next generation. Number 2 is flexibility and adaptability. Again, it's nothing new, but this has been really important in 2024. The rate of change within the industry when you've got technologies like AI evolving every week has been very incredible for a development perspective and being able to work quicker, more efficiently, but it's also been hard to keep up with the speed of change. And you've got a lot of ways of doing things now, and it's sometimes difficult to stick to regimented guidelines that were provided possibly 2-3 years ago. We might have ways of working or methodologies that haven't accounted for the progressions of AI or even just tools that you use every day in the industry. So sticking to the ways of working has been very difficult when you come into collaborative environments like working in Agile. As a UX designer in the past, sometimes I could just get away with designing a prototype or some wireframes to then hand over to developers, but now more than ever, that collaboration between me as a UI UX person and a front-end developer is absolutely crucial. And the benefit is that both of us are learning new things as we talk. I learn more about front-end development, they learn more about human-centered design, and it's really a great trade-off. And it's started to birth some new methodologies. It means that we are more flexible, we see both sides of the story instead of just our own, and the adaptability as well has really presented itself as something that is an important area that we focus on. And number 1 is prioritizing human-centered design. If you saw my last podcast, you will know all about human-centered design, or also known as user experience, user-centered design. You'll know why it's so important and why I care so much about it. Human-centered design is an approach that puts the user at the center of everything. It makes sure that we take into account all of their considerations, their requirements, their needs, their wants, their pain points, and we build a product that is perfect for them. Now, yes, there is no godlike user that we can just put in the middle, but it's about understanding everybody's requirements, and knowing your user base is the most important thing. Now, a few years ago, human-centered design was pretty much an afterthought everywhere you go. It was just a case of, we know what we want to build, we've got the requirements, here's what some people have said, let's get cracking and develop it. Nobody really gave a thought into interviewing them, into researching, into really having dedicated professionals that were there to design products and design what it was going to look like, how the solution was going to work, and prototype it out before getting to the development stage. Then we moved into this weird territory where companies started just asking for people to do UX. Like working for consultancies for the past 5 years, there were a few clients we had that said they'd heard about this new UX thing and they wanted a piece of it. So it was kind of on us to then sell it to them, which was great because we were able to have a lot of creative control about who's going to be involved, what do they need, and the end product, instead of being restricted by stakeholders and expectations necessarily. But it was also a bit of a weird time because you were kind of like, well, what do you want? If you just want UX, that's a pretty broad thing to ask for. And now we've got into this area where a lot of people are aware of what UX and human-centered design is. They have skilled professionals, they've got people who might have done a few courses, and expect our product owners and product managers to be aware of the importance of it if they get involved. And that's why they start bringing HCD people into project spaces. And that idea mirrors up with the boom in HCD jobs over the past couple of years, especially in 2021 to 2023, about the middle of last year. I would say that there was a huge boom and a lot of companies were looking to take on UX designers and user researchers, interface designers, content designers, and more recently, it's been a bit slower. I think there's been an apprehension within the industry to hire, partially due to the fact there's been a lot of tech layoffs, there's been a lot of downsizing, and companies have started to restructure themselves and really focus in on core elements of their product line. But it's also meant that that boom within the industry has put a lot of HCD people within these company cultures, and they've started to understand what HCD is. And they've progressed, they might have dropped off a few HCD designers, but at least that inherent culture is being installed and the mindset is there across the entire team. And it's creating happier users create happy stakeholders just create a happy environment all around. But that's going to be it for this episode of Design Ahead. As I said, this is going to be a two-parter. I've got 3 more topics to bring you next time, and we're going to release these episodes in the build-up to Christmas, and I think we might take a little bit of a break over Christmas and readjust for the new year, where I've got some really, really interesting stuff coming. So thank you so much for watching. Drop a subscribe if you're on YouTube, or a follow wherever you get your podcasts, as well as a like and a rating. Comment if you disagreed with anything, or if you thought that maybe there was some interesting points I missed out. And I will catch you guys in the next one.